in Puerto Rico, which, I mean, I was in Catholic school. I spent the next 2 years there, and I got a really great education in geometry, and that expanded the way that I felt. And I felt a security, because that chaos was from my past, from my life, that unpredictability that I experienced, that lack of trust of life and environment, except for my mother, was just so much for a kid. I felt like I recognized those shapes and those properties. It was like I was actually remembering something, putting something back together that was deep. And it was very joyful. Somehow, I don't know how to explain how, but it was and is joyful. The way that I remember this experience was like, it was not even me making these drawings. I was like, my hands had a certain memory of how to use these things, and I was not even thinking, and I was doing them. But then when I got this exhaustion and I had to go back to it and draw, I had to start thinking it, and I could not, because I hadn't gone through the process of looking at it step by step. So I was like, what is this? What is this thing that flows through me and knows, but it's not yet coming? The hands and the head are there's two things there. By using these instruments and the logical way in which one thing would result in another. So I learned it. So my hands and my head, my mind were together there. I finally came to the drawing. It was not using the compass, it was another kind of construction. And I achieved the construction, and I didn't know how I did. And what was common to these classes was like the use of the tools, the compass and the ruler. And so there is something really incredible and joyful in the use of these tools, which is, among other things, you're making images, you're making figures, but you're also making movements. I like this movement of the compass. It reminds me of a ballerina, standing on one point and spinning. So I had all these different marker moments in which I had this memory of these things somehow in me that I had not learned properly, and then I had to just catch up with them. And the geometry class somehow was an antidote, maybe I should use the word, where everything was right and you could trust that you could figure what one thing would resolve. I just had a childish almost connection with those tools, but then when I saw that I could create with them, it was just excellent excuse to play with them. But what I realized was that I had not learned it to begin with. Learn in the sense of like, I had not studied how to do this. I didn't have the language, I didn't have the education, but I did have some kind of memory of doing this that came through my hands, not through my head somehow. So it became a very important challenge for me to actually learn it so that I could anchor it, so that I could be able to remember it and use it and teach it later when I became a teacher. I remember that trust feeling. It was something that I had not experienced up to that point, and it just opened up something. It was not easy to explain, but it was just a class. But it was amazing, and it just lifted me in some way at that point that I needed very, very much. I became aware that there was a possibility outside of my own life that was so chaotic that I could look forward to. But it's funny how things didn't unfold when I wanted them. They unfolded when I needed them. But in the process, I started finding that when I used the compass in a certain way, as I knew it, you were never drawing the whole circles. And I started playing with that, and I started seeing what would happen if I would draw those circles. And instead of just drawing certain shape that I would be trying to create, I would draw the whole construction of the circle that generated that shape. And I remember that I started uncovering these forms that not forms, and in this case, this organization that circles would take naturally by just following a certain kind of like, I want to say the word maybe choreography. I don't know what word to use to describe this. I knew that this was practiced in a much more meaningful way than just like cutting these patterns and folding them and creating the forms and then looking at them. I knew that that was not all there was to it. I remember that I started finding that there were some really important points that could be shared by various forms simultaneously. And then I started finding how this could be recognized and represented using the circles matrix. It was like magic, and so many things just evolved out of it. And other forms and other patterns have come up through this process. And I should say, going back to the memory of my past, one of the things that I recognize about geometry is tangible. It's something that you can see happen in front of you. It's not an idea that is abstract without an image to hold on to. And I think that was probably one of the ways that it grasped me, and still to this day.